Hey brother, are you finding that porn is messing you up socially? So all of the porn, all of the fantasizing, it makes it so you can't interact when it comes to the real life situation. It's super awkward. You can't get out of your head. What's the distinction between the fantasies and how do you get back into the real world? I'm gonna help you bridge the gap in this video. Let's not waste any time. Let's talk about it now. And before we jump in, this is the work I do, what I've dedicated my life's work to. So if you need help and support with this, there's a link below the video to speak with me directly, and I'd love to be able to help you with this transformation that you're trying to make. Okay, so this video was inspired by a question from one of our community members, one of our brothers. I'm gonna read the question off here, and then I'm gonna get into answering this question for you, okay? So our brother says, I find myself often fantasizing about women, often. It does say often twice. Let me read it again. Sorry, brother. I didn't mean to put you on the spot here. Okay, so I find myself often fantasizing about women often. So that, I think that speaks to a lot about how compulsive it is, right? Like going into all sorts of scenarios in my mind, i.e. fantasize about going on dates, having sex, kissing, things like that. And it makes me extremely socially awkward around women. The porn probably doesn't help either, in brackets. And the question is, how do we ease out of the fantasies and back into the real world? Man, amazing question. Thank you for this question. So let's get into answering this question right now. And here's the key. I want to bring your attention to something here. The key principle that I want you to understand, I have my book here, and that is the power of your imagination. So I think oftentimes when we hear imagination, we think a couple of things. We think like childhood imagination. It's like the little kids, or maybe there's that little kid, he didn't have any friends, so he had to imagine his imaginary friend, or he's talking to his imaginary stuffed animals and having those conversations with them. We think about it that way. And then the other way is we think imagination has to do with some big creative idea, imagination. And you get into the zone of genius where you use your creative faculties in this way. That's not what I'm talking about. And I want to really ground you in the importance of imagination. And this was actually one of my mentors. So the book is Performing Under Pressure, and it's by Dr. Saul Miller. He's a famous sports psychologist out here in Vancouver. Incredible guy. And quick story is I reached out to Dr. Miller when I had claustrophobia when I was doing jiu-jitsu competitions. So as soon as I would see eyes on me, I would go into that same reaction in a social situation, but it would be on the mats, and I would start to get claustrophobic, stage fright, and I just couldn't perform, blanking out, can't breathe, physical symptoms, massive anxiety. So I started seeing him for this issue. And then at that time though, I was kind of losing interest in jiu-jitsu, and I started trying to use his techniques for when I was trying to do public speaking at work. And if you guys know my story, I couldn't speak at work. My mind was going completely blank. I was experiencing insane panic attacks, physical symptoms, couldn't breathe, could only get a few words out every single time I was in my work meetings. And so I started trying to work with Dr. Miller, who was very big on positive affirmations, visualization, very big components. Although I couldn't integrate those things into social anxiety in particular, the key principle that I really took from him was the power of imagination. Okay, and I wanna read this out to you. What he says here in his book. Imagination is the most powerful quality of the mind. It's important to understand that the body doesn't distinguish between what's real and what's imagined. It simply reacts to the mental pictures you focus on. So we're answering this question where our brother is trying to figure out, like, how do you get out of fantasy and get into the real world conversation, the real life social situation? And here's what I want to tell you is that there's no difference. There's no such thing as living in fantasy over here, and then all of a sudden you're going to experience something completely different while you're in the social situation. And here's the exercise that I want you to do. Please pause the video and take the time to do this. Remember what I said and what Dr. Miller said. The body can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. So what I want you to do is that last attractive woman that you saw, okay? I'm sure you have her. She's in your mind. You've been carrying her around with you for days. I want you to picture you're right back into that moment. So remember, right back into that moment, you put eyes on her. You had this massive surge of sex energy and attraction. And I want you to picture as though when you see her in your imagination, you can only see your own arms and legs in front of you. This is very important. Don't visualize yourself in the situation. Immerse yourself fully into it so you only see her in front of your face and your own arms and legs, so you're fully immersed into that situation that you're imagining. We call this active imagination because it's a very realistic thing. And what you're going to notice is you're going to have the exact same physiological response as you did a few days ago or a few weeks ago when you first saw her. It's still just as intense. The panic's still there. The rush of energy to your head, the obsession, the rush of sex energy to your genital area, it's all going to be exactly the same. Your body can't tell the difference between what's real when it actually happened and what's imagined. You thinking back to that mental image after the fact, even though you're no longer in that social situation. So make sure you pause the video, take the time and effort to do the exercise, experience this for yourself. Don't be one of those guys that just watches the videos like, yeah, I get it. No. Pause the video, do yourself the biggest favor, go through the exercise yourself, and you will see very, very quickly, you will see for yourself, it's not just Rubin's words, you will experience the fact that your body goes into that same physiological reaction, that fight or flight, that surge of energy where you feel like you lose control of yourself. It's still there even though you're not in the situation itself. Now, the principle that applies here is the universal law of cause and effect. Be careful here. Most people think they understand cause and effect. Oh yeah, I do this, and because I did this, there's a result after. Cause and effect. That is not cause and effect. If you really want to make this universal law work for you, where you perform an action and you guarantee to get results, you have to dial in your understanding here. What is cause and effect? Cause and effect is you are experiencing the effects of a cause. What are the effects? You are experiencing this extreme awkwardness around women. And it has nothing to do with acting awkwardly. We got to go back before that. You are experiencing the effects of a cause. What is the cause? You're already awkward around women with these mental images that you have in your mind. The way you're relating them to women in your mind, far before you get into the social situation, it's already awkward. And to give you a better understanding of this, let's say you're looking in the mirror and you don't like what you see. You see this t-shirt, you think it looks off, you're like, man, this looks so bad. Do you start arguing with the reflection in the mirror, expecting the reflection to change? Like, hey man, change that shirt, man. You look like shit, dude. You gotta change that shirt. Like, you can't go out like that. Of course not. You can't argue with the reflection itself. You work with what is being reflected. You're the one that's being reflected. You gotta go change your shirt. Go change your shirt, come back, you look, there's a different reflection. So here's what I'm saying to you to bring it back here. You are having all these awkward interactions with women, for example, and it's very important to understand that your behaviors are a part of the reflection. your behaviors, it feels like, oh my goodness, like, how am I acting this way? What's going on? It's like you have no control. That's a part of the reflection, and it's leading to these super awkward situations, maybe some standoffish reactions from people as well. But again, that's the reflection. You don't argue at the reflection. You don't, just like you don't argue with yourself to go change your shirt. You go change your shirt, and then you'll have a different reflection over here. So what I'm telling you, you don't work on the reflected, you work on what's being reflected. You don't work on the awkward interactions, you work on the internal thoughts, feelings, and beliefs that are being reflected in that social situation. And I drew up this diagram to help you really understand the dynamics of those internal thoughts, feelings, beliefs that end up playing out in real life. So for this scale here, you could call it the David Hawkins scale, Frederick Dodson, Abraham Hicks, Maslow hierarchy of needs. It follows a similar trajectory. These great teachers of our time that have used this scale to help you understand what's happening internally when you experience certain things, which for you is this awkwardness around women. Now, the lower you go, the more uncomfortable you feel in your body. I just want you to think about it that way. You're gonna have more physical symptoms going on the lower you go. So shame, for example, this is the feeling, this is like self-hatred. It's like, there's something wrong with me. There's something inherently defective about me. There's something just fundamentally flawed about me. Very, very uncomfortable to be in touch with those thoughts and feelings within yourself. So what do you do is, in order to not be in touch with this, like, who wants to feel and think that about themselves? Of course, nobody wants to think and feel that about themselves. So what do is you're gonna run up into your mind, into desire. And that's when you start fantasizing. And just on an energetic level, I would even say just on a more functional level, it makes sense, right? It's to be stuck here in guilt and shame. For example, shame, there's something inherently wrong with me. I'm some sort of defective being. Or guilt, just ruminating about past mistakes. I'm a failure. I'm going nowhere in life because of these past things, these past mistakes that I've made. It's very hard to function when you're here. So it's a lot easier to not have to feel that and run up into your mind, because at least you can experience some sort of pleasure here in that fantasy. It feels really good as a crutch. But I want you to pay very, very close attention to what I'm gonna say next to you, okay? Very important. I want you to really grasp this. You having these thoughts, these desire, these fantasies, I want you to understand, there's always an intention behind the thoughts. There's always an underlying motivation to the thoughts. There's a deeper why to why those thoughts are flooding your mind. What's the deeper why? To get away from that feeling like there's something wrong with you. To get away from your own shame. This powerlessness, that you have no value, you have zero worth as a human being. Powerlessness. Now I want to ask you intuitively, what is somebody who feels absolutely powerless? What does he try to do? He tries to gain power. He tries to regain his power in some way. So what are you trying to do? Is you're trying to dominate this woman in your head through these fantasies. Think about the fantasies. Like, be honest with yourself. Are you treating her like a human being? Are you completely dominating, dehumanizing her with these fantasies in order to gain a sense of control, to feel like you have some sort of power? You feel like a complete loser down here. So what happens? I want you to, the next time this feeling comes up, notice how quickly you start going into dominating somebody sexually. And what I want you to understand, that is the fakest power that you could ever pursue in your entire life. It is a complete illusion of power and control. There's a famous saying, my friend was telling me about it. It was in House of Cards and I looked it up. It's by Oscar Wilde, this famous poet. Everything in the world is about sex except sex. Sex is about power. Sex is about power. Now here's the thing. This helps you feel like you're in some sort of control. You escape these feelings down here that there's something wrong with you. You escape the pain for a little bit. But remember what I said at the beginning of the video. Your body can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. This circuit that you're running in your mind, it's the exact circuit that's gonna run when you're in the presence of actual women. And here's the thing though, what's being reflected, that mirror reflection is a reflection of what's being reflected. Why? Why do you end up so awkward when you're in person? Because you lost your crutch. This doesn't exist in the real world. So now you're in a social situation and your circuit is so strong inside what's being reflected that you're in your head, but the demands of the social situation, you have to have a conversation, you have to be present, you have to engage. But this is too strong. So what happens is you end up stuck in your head. Maybe it's a group environment and you have a bit of space where the social demands aren't so demanding, where you don't have to converse, but you're sitting there in your head because you can't stop this circuit from running. It's way too strong. So to bring this home, I want you to stop using crutches even when you're not around women. I want you to be very, very diligent that when you carry that picture in your mind, how are you relating to that human being? She has a soul. She has wounds. She's got a lot of problems, man. So ultimately, how are you relating to her? Don't argue with the awkwardness. Don't argue with the reflection in the mirror. Don't try to change this behavior that you have and try to hammer at this external thing. No. So the next time you feel yourself circulating up here, just know that there's something percolating down here. Get in touch with healing this down here, because this is what's actually being reflected in the social situation. This is where the awkwardness is coming from, because you haven't found a way to get down here and heal this deep, deep wound within yourself. So if you need support with this, I have a program. And if you want some guidance, there's a call below. Book that call, and I would love to speak to you directly and support you on your journey. This is the work I do. I help highly ambitious yet selfless young men who are heavily into personal development. They're reaching for the highest version of themselves, but they find themselves inexpressive, very self-conscious, anxious, and people-pleasing when interacting with people, and they hate themselves for it. And I guide them to expressing themselves confidently, assertively, and connecting with people authentically by reducing their anxiety levels and loving themselves for it. Which is amazing, because they get to be the self-assured man that they once put on a pedestal. They get to be proud of who they are and feel confident that anything in life is possible. So if you feel called to, book that call below. I'll talk to you soon, and I'll see you in the next video, all right? Peace.